101 event. We would like to welcome and thank our presenters for agreeing to present today. We appreciate your willingness to share your expertise. We can go to the next slide, April. Thank you. So if you are new to SCMLE, we would love to stay connected with you. We are a nonprofit that supports educators that work with multilingual learners, whether that is a ML teacher, a content area teacher, other staff around the building, or an administrator. We are here to serve you. So we do have a private Facebook group for just South Carolina teachers, but everyone is welcome on the public page as well as the other social media platforms. We do recommend you joining the mailing list. It's a great way to stay connected and make sure you don't miss out on any of the events that we have. And we only send out a newsletter once a month and only a reminder whenever there is an event, so we do not try to spam you. Anyone is welcome to sign up for the newsletter. Okay. We can go to the next slide.
Can y'all see that? Something's going on.
It's still showing the social media platforms.
Okay, sorry about that. Hold on 1 second.
No, you're good.
There you go.
There we go. Thank you. We do have a huge silent auction and in-person event, which we would love your support. The silent auction began on January 18th with some incredible things to bid on. We will be using GiveButter as the platform, and more information will be shared soon. We also have an in-person event on February 1st in Charleston at Estuary Beans and Barley. We would love to have you attend. There will be additional raffle items there, as well as ways to continue bidding on the silent auction that ends at 5 p.m. and it coincides with the end of the event. So we would love for you to share with anyone willing to support, and we truly have some incredible items to bid on, so make sure you check it out. And we also have an upcoming event with the Reading League. And it's a great way to be informed on all things with literacy instruction for multilingual students. Okay, please welcome our presenters. We have Ms. Thompson, Ms. Saunders, and Ms. Shannon.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Willyn Thompson. I am the MLP specialist for Fort Mill Schools at the secondary level high school. Today, I will be presenting Bridging Cultures, Bridging Futures, and Supporting Multilingual Learners. Next slide, please. To give you a brief description about my connection to this work, I am a second-generation immigrant from Haiti. I learned English when I entered school. At a very young age, I was an interpreter for my parents between the languages of Haitian Creole and English. In today's terms, I would be considered a long-term English learner because navigating two worlds, two cultures, two languages was extremely difficult for me throughout my academic journey. So this work that I do with multilingual learners is personal and is deeply rooted in my identity. I have worked with students who felt like they had nothing to offer because they understood nothing. And I would come alongside them and say, practice makes you better. You don't have to be perfect, just well practiced. This is social emotional learning at its core. When you see the student, you're building relationships, building trust, casting our expectations to the side, and really building on their potential. This is the keys to success, not just in our classrooms or in our school buildings, but outside of our school buildings and for life. Next slide, please. You being here today is an indication that you do care about these students, that you see them, you see their challenges, and for them, I say thank you. Today's population that I will be speaking about is newcomers and life students. Newcomers are recently arrived, navigating a new culture and language. And then you have the life students, who are students with limited or interrupted formal education. Both populations have assets. They're extremely resilient. They've gone through situations that we probably will never undergo in our lifetime. They have great cultural perspectives, and they are multilingual, which I believe is a superpower in its own right. The challenges that they face are language barriers, of course. Some have academic gaps and cultural transitions. Next slide, please. Every student is on a journey, but for this population of students, their journey requires a lot of patience, a lot of time, and a lot of understanding. In the classrooms, you will find that content specific abstract language is very difficult for them because it's not language that they use in conversations every day. It's not something that they will hear outside of our classrooms. So explicit teaching is important. Um, uh, they also struggle with sentence structure, even as a senior, a junior, a sophomore, freshman. They don't always know that to start a sentence, you need a capital and you need a period. They don't know punctuation. They don't know conjunction. They don't know those things, how to put the words together or build a word bank. So having those practices already in place for them so that they don't feel like an utter, they feel like you see them and you see where they need help is a great practice to have. Emotional trauma, fear of failures, and lack of confidence. A lot of them, they're holding their families on their shoulders. They're the first ones to go to the American school system. And so they're pretty much the savior of the family. And of course, that creates a lot of pressure, fear of failing. And of course, social difficulty integrating with classmates because they don't speak the language, they feel like they don't belong. So those are many of their challenges. Next slide, please. Overcoming challenges, making language and content accessible. In the high school level, you often hear, um, in high school, we scaffold up comprehensible input. What does that mean? And to be honest, it is the basic of basics. Keeping it simple is the best way to build the foundation that these students need. It's breaking content into smaller, manageable pieces. For instance, if you have a short story with 5 paragraphs, breaking them up into groups, giving them specific highlighters, color coding the text. This is what you are looking for in this text, in this paragraph. I'm going to come back doing the same thing for the other groups with different paragraphs. And they become the expert in that paragraph and they're teaching each other. And in that one lesson, they're reading, they're listening, they're speaking, they're with their peers, and they're learning, and they become the teacher. So that's building confidence, using visual timelines, labeled maps and images, and of course, providing bilingual resources and sentence frames. Those are all ways to build our students up, build their foundation, and set them up in a solid ground so as they grow in our schools, they could be successful. Next slide, please. Learning together, pair and group strategies. I cannot stress how important it is for these students to be with their peer groups and to practice their speech with their peer groups. As I stated about a color-coded activity, a jigsaw method, um, simplifying content, pairing them up with empathetic peers. You know your classrooms. Sometimes this is better said than done, but over time, you know the students that will help our multilingual students, and pairing them with a native born speaker or is a better, it just helps with their belonging. It helps with the community building. It helps with their confidence. Incorporate group projects like skits, posters, or interactive activities. Our multilingual students, they are artistic. They are they are amazing in every level of amazing. I'm always blown away when I think of outside the box and something that could be a worksheet. Okay, instead of a worksheet, we're doing an interactive activity. We're going to make this prompt into a skit. I'm always amazed at what they could create. I work with U.S. history teacher, and she is so amazing. She does the guided notes at the beginning of the class, and then she shows a video with the captions on the bottom based on the instruction that they just heard. Then the next activity, the control practice, will be guided questions. And then the freer practice will be an art activity where they will color the map of the colonies that they just learned about. All of those things are breaking the content in smaller pieces and helping them practice it over and over and over again. US history, most kids don't have background knowledge in that content area. So to do it that way is keys to success. It's social emotional learning. It's building them up and creating a space where they feel like they belong. Next slide, please. Engaging with technology and media, Edpuzzle, YouTube, all those resources are great. Sora for audio books. I just recently purchased recorders for my students because I know they struggle with writing. I have a digital journal where I will put a prompt every day or once or twice a week, and they will respond to the prompt using the recorders. Then after they upload the recorder responses, they use their own words to create their word banks. And together, one-on-one, we work on sentence structure. It takes time, but I'm willing to do that because I want them to build their foundation. And in that one lesson, they are reading, they're speaking, they're building their confidence, they're thinking, they're doing what they need to do to be effective and efficient, not just in our classrooms, but outside of our school doors. Video clips for cultural context. I already talked about recorders, multimedia tools for content creation. If you have an intermediate group, podcasts would be a fun way of, just assessing how they're thinking about a topic that you guys are discussing. I already talked about skits and art and all that stuff. There's so many different resources. I would really encourage you to speak to your tech person to see what you can use, because there's really no excuse. There's too much out there for you to just not have it together. Next slide. To leave it to end, every educator is essential in supporting multilingual students like us. They are humans. They want to be heard. They want to be seen. They want to be valued. It doesn't matter what background, their immigration status, or how they speak English, or what brought them to your classroom. If they are in your classroom and it's 20 degrees outside and they have shorts on, they made a choice. They made a choice to be there. They made a choice to learn, and they are ready. All they need is someone who believes in them. So I would encourage you to keep up the good fight. You don't have to be perfect. It's trial and error. We're not always going to get it right, but practice makes us better. We don't have to be perfect, just well practiced. And that's where I end today.
Thank you so much, Willen. My name is Jen Saunders. I am in Beaufort County. It's my 4th year in South Carolina, but for a very long time, I was a high school teacher for multilingual students in a very large high school in a district in Maryland. And then I had the opportunity to serve our ESOL office as a resource teacher, which is kind of like an instructional specialist. And I served predominantly our high school programs in the same district. So I've kind of am coming to you with a perspective of being an elementary, middle, and high school multilingual teacher in a large high school with over 300 multilingual students. We were the largest department with 10 teachers in our department. And then coming to you kind of from a bird's eye view of what school programs might look like at the secondary level. So hopefully I have some insights that might be helpful to you as an educator who is serving high school newcomers. So I want to start with what our high school newcomers are bringing with them. I think it's really important to focus on our high school newcomers as children because a lot of times our older students especially are presenting to us as adults. Some of them may have families of their own. I had several students with children. Some of my students had full-time occupations or jobs outside of high school. So they would get finished with their school day and go immediately to work and sometimes be there until very late at night. It would cause them to oversleep or be late the next day. But just having that frame of reference for who they are outside of school is of the utmost importance. Some of our students are coming to us unaccompanied. So they have come on a very hard and long journey by themselves. Some of my students rode La Bestia, which is the train from Central America through to Mexico and then cross the border on foot. So some of them are bringing with them immense amounts of trauma. Some of our students may come to us from other countries and not have that traumatic experience. Some of our students are refugees from other places. So we just need to kind of keep in mind some of the things that may be presenting in different ways when they enter the school building that are just immense and really immense for adults to handle, let alone children. Some of our students may be living with relatives they've not seen in a long time, or they've never met or don't know at all. Some of our kids are from very warm, different climates. I remember students seeing snow for the first time at the age of 20 when they would come for the first time to United States schools, and they were just mystified by that, just the sight of winter and what that was like. They may not have any concept of what the seasons are, or they may be very different where they used to live. So all of these experiences serve as assets because they all point to the resilience of our students, the strength of our students, the capacity for growth, and taking on some really adult challenges at a very young age. I had students in my, I taught ESOL social studies too, which was a prerequisite for United States government and history classes to build that frame of reference for the courses that they would take. It was an elective. And then we had course sections for ESOL 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 2 of those sections counted as English grades for English 1 and 2 because we aligned our curriculum to English standards for high school. And so some of my students were very young. They were 14, and it spanned all the way up until the age of 20. So having a mixed group in that way also presents some challenges and adventures. Just being in a multi-age, multi-experience classroom setting can be a challenge and also extremely beneficial to every student in the classroom. So all of our kids are bringing with them all of these different things, and it is of the utmost importance that we get to know our kids as much as possible in order to meet them where they are and access where they are in order to start to learn academic content. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about what that looks like in terms of supports that a school can offer to meet the wide range of needs of our children who are coming to us from many different situations. So I would say that one of the most important needs that we need to assess are physical needs. Our kids can't learn if they don't have their physical needs met. So it is really important to assess whether or not your kids have the appropriate clothing, such as jackets or long pants, hats and gloves, which we don't need too much here, especially in the low country, but rare weather events kind of happen sometimes and our kids should be equipped. We want to connect our students with food resources. I know some schools do like backpack buddies or partnerships with food banks or have their own food bank in the school building. So it's really important that we assess whether or not our kids have their physical needs met and connect them with the appropriate services. Some of my kids needed assistance filling out farms forms for free and reduced meals. They weren't necessarily able to, they didn't know that they existed. They were there by themselves and acting as their own guardian. So it's really important that we really dig down and help our kids and meet them where they are. Immediate support needs may also include mental health services or physical health services, such as clinics or mental health care. And without asking about the documentation status of our students and kind of working around insurance, some of the clinics in our neighborhood are able to provide service to our kids who are coming from a wide range of backgrounds and with various levels of resources in place. So it's just important to put our feelers out into the community at large and determine what resources might be available to our kids without prying too deep. I know that we already are so overworked and a lot of responsibility is placed on us as educators, but I think multilingual learner educators are tasked with a very unique set of circumstances sometimes, and part of our role is sort of social work. So I know that a lot of our kids needed connection with these resources, and it was important that we provided them. Some of our in-building services that may be supportive to our kids would be counseling through the school. Some of our districts have a newcomer center that has connections to different resources that are beneficial to our newcomers. Or maybe a newcomer center or program is in place in your school building. I know that we're all coming with various levels of programs and constructs of programs and various sizes of student population. So it's kind of unique to your own situation, what you know is in place already. But if you aren't aware, maybe it's a helpful thing to ask around at the district level to see what resources are available to your newcomers and to you. And one really important thing, I think, as our newcomers transition, we often are so focused on their academic needs and physical needs that we kind of might overlook the social emotional connection that our newcomers need to build to their new school community. So things like information about clubs or activities like sports teams. Some of our kids have other responsibilities outside of school that might prevent them from participating, but it's really important that all information that is shared with our monolingual English speaking students is also shared in an equal way with our newcomers and multilingual kids. Next slide, please. So we may have varying levels of impact in terms of school programming, but one thing that I implore you to consider is having a big picture of what your school offers to all students so that you are able to adequately advocate for your multilingual students. So I know that every school has a course catalog and there's a course sequence that all students need to walk through in order to achieve graduation. Some of our kids may be scheduled into paths because they are coming as older newcomers that don't allow them the opportunity to graduate if they were to complete that course sequence. It's really important that we have a very clear picture of where our kids need to go so that they have equal access to the opportunity to graduate, even though they're coming as newcomers. Some of our kids may also be coming with transcripts from their home country, and it's really important that we are connected with someone who's able to interpret those and award appropriate credits as they were earned in the home country so that our kids can get credit and start in the appropriate placement when they come. I would say that one of the barriers for our newcomers sometimes is lack of understanding on the part of staff about what our kids are entitled to. So our kids should never be turned away due to age. Every state is different. In the state of Maryland, our students could legally attend school until they were of 21 years of age, until that school year. So I don't ever want our newcomers to come and be turned away or not programmed appropriately because of their age or newcomer status. It's important to consider the level of proficiency of your newcomers. So not all newcomers are coming with the same level of English proficiency, even though they're brand new to our country. It's really important also that we get a clear picture as much as we can of the level of native language literacy that our students are coming with. Some of our kids have not attended school for a very long time. There's SLIFE students or students with limited or interrupted formal education. And some of our kids have attended school regularly in their home country up until they made the move to the United States. In one case that I can remember, a SLIFE student that I had the opportunity to work with had not attended school since he was in 2nd grade, and we were trying to get him assessed for special education services. And we were bumping up against the idea that he had just missed so much content, it's impossible to determine if he is eligible for services. But through conversation with his family, we learned that he stopped attending school because there were not resources available to him to meet his needs in school. And so he left and began work with his family. So it could have been that he would have been eligible for services at a very young age. So in order to advocate appropriately, it's important that we make those connections with families as much as we can, as much as it is important to connect with our students. From a course scheduling perspective, if you have the ability to take a seat at a table where decisions at a school level are made, I really encourage you to find where those tables are and sit at them if you're able, and advocate for appropriate scheduling of your students, for compassionate scheduling based on knowledge of educators that or colleagues that are aware of the needs of your multilingual students and are open to using strategies that make their content accessible. So offering maybe sheltered sections of certain courses or co-taught sections, as the next piece of our presentation will guide you through. It's really important that we ensure that our kids take all the exams and benchmarks and in-course assessments that will earn them credit in their classes, that they're not exempt from those, because I think sometimes with the best of intentions, our secondary newcomers are excluded from opportunities to participate in things that they actually need in order to eventually graduate. So we don't want their access to be limited and therefore their path toward graduation to be limited. And I would say that all of this kind of rests on having a really strong partnership with your counseling team, and informing them of federal law as gently as you can, the importance of scheduling appropriately, and just kind of building that partnership is really key. Next slide, please. And one other way that you are able to be super effective at a school level for your newcomer students is understanding what the needs and strengths of your colleagues are in terms of building opportunities and instruction that best meet the needs of your multilingual students. So I would say that in my experience, most educators in most states, in order to earn their teaching credential, are not required to take any courses pertaining to multilingual students. So it could be that you're working with many colleagues who have never received formal training in meeting the needs of our MLs. And so in turn, you have an opportunity as a coach and a colleague to spread awareness about sheltered instructional strategies like SIOP. I know that it's a requirement in our district in Beaufort for educators to have SIOP training at some point, but that it may not be the case that the teachers in your building have had that. So if not, is it possible to sit down with your administration and plan opportunities for PD sessions around our ML students? Or can you invite your district in to give some training to your staff? Because the more educators on your team that are aware of and passionate about meeting the needs of your MLs, the better your program will be. If there is not a point of contact or a liaison for your ML department to the content teams, that's an important piece that I ask you to consider. And I would also say that understanding the ILAP as a legally binding document, as important as an IEP, and the need to follow the strategies and supports in that document is also a point that I, in my experience, have bumped up against. So collaboration with your teachers who serve your students, constructing a plan that works for your student and in their best interest, and making it a living document that you both can converse about and change. And as your students grow, the document should also grow. One other piece I want to mention is spreading awareness of modification versus accommodation. A lot of secondary educators are very sure of their understanding of their content and kind of lose sight of elementary strategies that work just for all students. I started my career as an elementary teacher, and so I brought a lot of those strategies with me to the high school setting, and I tried to advocate for their use in all courses. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But I would say that a lot of colleagues would bump up against the idea of making their content easier or taking away some of the rigor. And it's important to remind those colleagues that we are accommodating and not modifying. We're not changing the expectation. We are accommodating our newcomers and all MLs' ability to access and perform at grade level. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, our newcomers at the secondary level are bringing with them so many assets and strengths and resilience and life experience that brings so much to all the classroom settings that they enter in a high school building. It's really important to spread that message to your colleagues. I ask you to consider what positive structures are already in place in your building. And if those structures aren't there, what can you do to help build them? Are there peer buddies that you could, a program for more proficient students to mentor your newcomers? Are there tutoring sessions that you could help to facilitate? Connections can be made in many different ways, and I ask you to take a look and see how you can make those at a school level. What areas of growth can you identify in your school building? Is it the level of understanding of your students? If so, how can you convey that? Can you become a part of PD that's already taking place? How can you partner with your colleagues that you already have a relationship with to implement some changes that would make instruction stronger for your newcomers? And I also ask you to find an ally in your work, whether it be in your school building or outside. For the past few years, I've worked as an itinerant ML teacher at 3 different school buildings, and that can be pretty lonely. So finding this network has been a personal and professional game changer for me in finding like-minded colleagues who help me grow and keep me pushing forward in this work. It can be very lonely and also very challenging work, but it also is the most rewarding. And I encourage you to find a team or one teammate to help you keep pushing forward in this work. So thank you so much for your time.
Hey everyone, I am Destiny Shannon, and I'm currently an MLP specialist in Spartanburg District 5. You can go to the next slide. I wanted to start off with this quote because I really like it and think it really encompasses what co-teaching is. So co-teaching provides multilingual learners with equitable access to cohesive learning opportunities that accelerate their social and academic English through meaningful opportunities to participate in grade level content. And I feel like that sums it up really well. Next slide. Just to give you a little information about my co-teaching journey, in the middle of the 2013-2014 school year, I became an ML teacher at 3 schools, an elementary, middle, and high school. And I'll be honest, I had no clue what I was doing. As many of us, I'm sure, had no clue what they were doing when they were first thrown into this role. So I just followed what the teacher before me did. I was in a small district, and at first I didn't have any newcomers. But then after Christmas, I received my first one. And of course, it was a high schooler. And I was early childhood certified. I had no idea about high school, about scheduling, anything what these ladies discussed. Of course, I had no network like we have now for support, no professional development. So I was a little lost, but made it through. Fast forward a couple of years, and I started to breathe a little bit. And I started realizing that something wasn't working for me. I spent way too much time trying to sort through all of my students' stuff for their classes and contacting teachers about assignments. And now, mind you, my class is not all about other classes. Of course, you know, I'm teaching them English, but I do like to save some time in class to help them with their content classes and answer questions. So I felt I just needed to know what was going on in their classroom, what the teachers were doing. You hear the stories from your students and it just doesn't add up. So I could better support my students by going into the classroom. And that's when I decided to start co-teaching in grades 6 through 8. I went into their ELA classes, and this allowed me to not only serve newcomers, but also other ML students as well. I had a class period of newcomers as well as going in co-teaching. So now I have been co-teaching for over 10 years and I love it. There have been some challenges. This year, for example, is a big challenge, but I wouldn't change it for anything and feel it's a great way to support newcomers. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about the 6 key things I believe help make co-teaching successful. So first, you have to find the right partner. Now, this can be a challenge and it might take some time, but I believe the challenge is well worth it for our students. If you're new to co-teaching, I recommend you start small. find a trusted colleague, brainstorm some ideas for co-teaching and how it might look and work within the classroom. You need a partner that is open and receptive to having someone in their classroom, someone that's going to help them with their lesson planning, and someone who's open for a challenge. Secondly, it's important to get to know each other. I'll be honest, most times I've just been thrown in with a teacher and said, now you're co-teaching. And we need to learn each other first. And I'm talking beyond just how many kids you have, or do you like sci-fi? We need to learn each other's teaching styles. And that might require you to sit back and observe for a little bit, because you are stepping into their classroom, and some teachers will be guarded about that. But it's important for you to take that step so that you can see where your teaching style fits in and where you can step in and provide support to the teacher and to the students. Getting to know each other's strengths is also an important step. And this helps establish a partnership of equals. Discuss your strengths, your observations, ask what they feel their strengths are, and share your strengths with them. Third, share your ML expertise. You have a ton of knowledge and experience to share. And I've found a good way to do this without intimidating your co-teacher is to let them ask you questions, or you pose things in a question, or you ask them, what questions do you have for me? This will allow them to better understand what you know and what you bring to the table. Next slide, please. Fourth, and to me, one of the most important things is to have a common planning. And I just cannot stress this enough. It is so important for you to walk into that classroom and know what the plan is for the day. If you do not, then you're just doing pushing. Common planning allows you to communicate about your lesson plans, additions to them, changes that might need to be made. You also have that time to discuss students, their needs, and how you can front load or support those needs in your classroom. Just today with my co-teacher, she was like, I'm seeing some of these students aren't gaining this concept. So I said, all right, I will reteach that in my classroom. Ultimately, it allows you both to work together in creating a cohesive classroom. And fourth, you need to be flexible and willing to try new things. Every teacher and every year is different. I encourage you to look up the different co-teaching models. There's like 7, some have 10, that can be used within the classroom, because different situations, lessons, different days will call for some of those different teaching styles. Also, you have to be flexible with scheduling from year to year. The same thing does not always work year after year because of teacher schedules, admin changes things, changes your teacher. Your ML population is always changing. So you need to be flexible. But please remember, when trying new things, there will be moments of failure, and that's okay, because that's how we learn. And because of these failures, that's why number 6 is important. You need to share your successes with colleagues and your team. This helps build support for co-teaching and collaboration throughout the whole school. So for example, my big moment last year I'll share with everyone is, like I said, I've been co-teaching over 10 years, and I really had no hard data behind that this co-teaching is doing something. We're successful at this. So last year I co-taught in Algebra 1. We had 22 ML students in Algebra 1 classes. 6 of those students did not pass the EOC. Out of those 6 students, 3 of them were second year in the country, and 3 of them were newcomers, their first year in the country. Out of those 3 newcomers, though, 2 of them were 2 points away from passing. Super close. Out of the 16 that did pass, 6 of them were newcomers. So we had success, and my co-teacher and I were just so excited that we just shared it all over the school and anyone who would listen. And you have to share that and build that momentum that this does work. Next slide, please. I have some warnings. Co-teaching is not for everyone. Like I said, you'll have some teachers that are resistant to it, and it might not even be your thing. I just encourage you to try it. I also warn you about the number of students. And what I mean by this is, I think a good number that I have found per class of like 20, 25 kids, whatever your district does, is to only have 5 to 7 ML students in there. This, or newcomers, you could have them newcomers, or you could also have some higher levels in there as well. But I would keep the numbers low, because then it turns into a different type of classroom, and that is more difficult to manage. I want you to be careful of resentment. Make sure that's why you build that relationship with your co-teacher, because the students will pick up on that resentment. If you and the co-teacher have some issues, the students will pick up on that, and they'll play into that and play you against each other, just like your kids do with mom and dad. And then again, it's so important to have common planning. I just cannot stress that enough. Next slide, please. So the benefits of co-teaching, just some of the ones that I've seen, is the increase in the social skills, the improvement in their academic performance. I truly believe we would not have had 6 newcomers pass had we not been doing co-teaching. You can serve students in multiple ways. You see the needs that you see the needs in the student learning, and you can help fill those gaps in your classroom by pre-teaching content and front-loading vocabulary. And then, of course, you can reteach concepts as well as needed. Next slide, please. Or is that my last one? Oh, wait. So I was just going to say thank you. If you have any questions about co-teaching, how it works, how to deal with resistant teachers, or even how to schedule at different levels. I've done a lot of different types of scheduling. I'd be more than happy to answer those questions if you throw them in the chat or in a few moments, or we can always email later. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. All 3 of our presenters. We did have a question pop up in the chat that I wanted to address real quick. And if you have any, we have a few minutes. If you have any, you are welcome to pop that in the chat. But the question is, are there any accommodations that our elementary and middle schoolers receive that high schoolers cannot receive due to high school credits? It's my understanding that modifications can be appropriate for our newcomers. I would love specific guidance on accommodations and modifications that are acceptable for high schoolers. So can any of our presenters speak to that? I think that Katie put in the chat box the link to our guiding principles for the state, but can anybody speak to that while we're here?
I would be happy to. I have taught at all 3 levels. And I will say that I think sometimes content teachers misconstrue what an accommodation is versus a modification. So in my understanding, modifications change the content standard or the overall expectation of the student. And so in a high school setting, we don't ever want that to be the reason that our newcomers or any multilingual student does not receive course credit. Because they didn't meet the content standard that was expected of them. So I would always advocate for accommodations to be made to the grade level standard, because access is really important. We want our kids to not have watered down curriculum, or some of my kids would say baby books used for them. We want to maintain the rigor and the level of access that our kids are receiving. So accommodating at the secondary level might look like showing the same video. These are just some examples, showing the same video to all students, but slowing the rate of speech to our newcomers, offering subtitles, and maybe a differentiated listening guide. You might have the same vocabulary, but a limited number of those words, the most important ones. And you may have students create a personal dictionary of those terms. You might also, on an assessment, make an accommodated version, not a modified one, with less distractors. So in a multiple choice assessment, you might take out 1 or 2 of the wrong answers in a big list of wrong answers. You might also make the phrasing a bit more concise. You might highlight pieces of text that students should really focus on. Instead of an entire 2 pages, you may cut it down to a paragraph or 2. So it's on the same content. it is meeting the same grade level standard, but the overall content has not been changed that you are expecting your newcomers to access. I hope that
Yeah.
helps.
Yes, I think that hopefully that helps. If you need some more clarification, just pop that in the chat box. That is always a struggle, even in elementary where I work right now. I've worked everywhere, but right now that's always something that our upper elementary, especially my 5th, 6th grade, struggle with, that we have to look at, what's the difference and how can we need to kind of lean toward accommodating in those upper grades versus modifying. I have another question that popped up. How are you scheduling co-teaching? So this will be for Destiny. So how do you schedule co-teaching? How many students are on your caseload? And are they all served via co-teaching?
It was a little bit different at middle school versus high school. So, and it really depends on how your schedules are at the middle school level. We had 7 class periods, and then they went to 8, and our ELA was blocked. So there was 2 blocks of ELA in middle school. I would co-teach the first part of ELA, and the second part I would pull them out for my MLP class. That's what worked at my school for me. So they would still get their English credit, but and their MLP credit. Sometimes though, because I traveled, some of my students would be in the full ELA block. So I would co-teach the first part or the second part, and teachers would flop their instruction for me. And I would schedule my middle schoolers in PE the whole entire year. And when I'm there, we miss a lot of days because of testing and meetings and all this other stuff that happens. So they would come see me during PE. And since they had PE the whole entire school year, they still receive their PE credit. In high school right now, I co-teach first semester with English 1 and second semester with Algebra 1. And I also have MLP class. First semester, because my numbers have gone up, so I have 65 that test. I'm at one school, 9th grade campus. So that's my entire population. I do not serve all of them. And right now, like I said, it's a struggle because I have many students in the co-taught class, and it's more of a sheltered instruction classroom versus being co-taught right now. So that's not the best way to do it, and it's a struggle, but we're making it work. So like I said, every year is different, but typically we would have 5 to 7 ML students in a classroom with 18 other 15 English speaking students, and kind of leave room for students to come in to that classroom. We always try to leave room in the classes. That's important, that they don't fully max out the class, so that when new students come in, you have room in your classroom. So I've served both almost like consultative students and newcomers in the co-teaching class. That cover everything?
I think so. I think that was a great answer. Co-teaching is different every day. I know with my first and second grade I co-teach with. I have another question from the Irmo area. It's actually I guess a 3-parter. The first one I'm gonna go one at a time. The first one, I guess, could be really anybody. What are some things that I can create as an instructional coach for gen ed teachers to have an on hand to help them scaffold students to success? This person works in has a large multilingual population at Irmo, and there's one multilingual teacher. And there's very little funding or support from the district. So that first part will be, what are some things I can create as an instructional coach for gen ed teachers to have on hand to help them scaffold students to success? I know off the top of my head, and if y'all want to answer, there are lots of resources and some if this, then that type of resources that we've had made on our website at South Carolina Multilingual scmle.org. I'm sorry. But if anybody wants to speak to something maybe that works for them.
I would be happy to share. I would advocate for the use of graphic organizers as much as possible. I think sometimes in secondary, in my experiences, also the simple changes that are no prep are the ones that I would advocate for. So careful use of language. A lot of our teachers in the secondary, not to generalize, are very much a lecture format in which the teacher conveys information for a very long amount of time, and students are taking notes on those lectures. And so there's a lot of teacher talk. So shifting the amount of teacher talk and allowing students to converse, even if it's in a language that the teacher does not understand, partner talk. So things that you would see in an elementary classroom, graphic organizers, opportunities for student discourse. I would say highlighting important pieces of text, maybe providing notes in advance with closed passages and a word bank. So if you are going to offer a lecture, providing the notes ahead of time and having students fill in only key pieces of those notes that you think are the most important. I would say use of closed captioning on videos, slowing your rate of speech, but not speaking louder. I would say that things that don't require any prior preparation or very little prior preparation are the things that I would advocate for. And reassuring secondary teachers that whatever strategies you're implementing for your newcomers or your MLs are going to benefit every student in the room, because every student is learning academic language as their first language. So it's new to everybody, and these supports are just best practice is kind of a route you could go.
I love that. Yes, really good no prep suggestions. The next part is how do I help gen ed teachers accommodate their learners but not feel the pressure to become an ESOL teacher or translate everything for students? Miss Willen, that might Willen or Jen or Destiny. I'm gonna let anybody look at that one.
Will you repeat it again for me?
Yes, ma'am. How do I help gen ed teachers accommodate their learners but not feel the pressure to become an ESOL teacher or translate everything for students?
That's tough. I think there's lots of layers to that question.
Mhm.
A couple things come to mind would be giving explicit directions and making sure that it's written out for students to see step by step what they need to do in order to access an assignment. I know a lot of my students are not familiar with using technology, and that can be frustrating. So making sure that those steps are outlined for them. Had another thought, but I lost it. Oh, and really just sharing those concerns with the ML teacher so that we can teach students to self-advocate for themselves and be able to put the supports in that they might need. Like I have a document translator website all saved on my students' computer so that they can translate all the PowerPoints that they need to, if they need to, and just giving students the tools so the teacher can reach out to us and see, okay, this might be what we need. We can help them find the tools, or just the teacher giving the students the tools ahead of time and telling them, remember, you can translate this, you can use this, or I have this note-taking sheet to help you. I have a teacher that's giving notes sheets for the test. So here's your notes that you can use on the test.
Thank you for that, Destiny. This is, we'll go with this one last question and then we'll close up everything. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, you can contact us at all of these places. We will do our best to answer those and provide resources. But here's our last one. How can we support / protect students and their families due to legislations that enable ICE to approach sensitive areas like school?
So this is something that our network is currently working on, compiling some resources that will be helpful to our educators in navigating these changes. So I believe that more information about that will be forthcoming, I think, in the month of February.
Yes, that is correct. I think that is a great answer. So be looking for that later. So if you would look at the slide, I should still be sharing it. These are all of our social media links, handles. If you want to follow us or look up any of our information, you can visit those spots. We have here a QR code. If you'll go ahead and do that feedback form, we would greatly appreciate it. We'll also be resending your certificates email by the end of the next week. And it will be various emails because we usually split it up on our team as to who sent. Each of us send a few. So if it's a strange email, look at it before you delete it. It might be your certificate from us. But if you don't receive yours, or if you have any questions, please email Alexis at scmle.org. Be looking for that more information in February about helping protect and support our multilingual families. We greatly appreciate people coming to our event. And you can look at the chat box. I've been notified you can look at the chat box for answers to some of those questions that were asked. I see we're having a problem with the QR code. Can anybody speak to that? It's working for myself as well.
Yes, I'm able to open it also on my phone.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing where it may be, the link might be broken, but I would suggest just typing in the bit.ly link if you're not able to use the QR code to open it.
Yes, thank you, Jen. That would be great. If you just copy and paste that bit.ly link or type it in to your browser, that should work instead of the QR code. If there is nothing else, again, follow us on all of our locations, look for your certificate and for more information about supporting our multilingual families. And we greatly appreciate you attending. Y'all have a great night and enjoy your weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, all three of you presenters. Y'all did great. I appreciate y'all answering questions in the at the end there.
Thank you so much. You're an awesome facilitator. I appreciate you very much.
No, not a problem. I feel like I apologize at the beginning for that. a few of those snafus, but I was doing 2, 3 things at the same time.
It was great. You did awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, ladies.
Destiny, you were awesome. Have a great
Yes, you
weekend.
did great.
You
Even
too.
on your phone, right?
I know. And then
You never would have known.
then the sound went out halfway through one of the presentations. I'm like, I can't hear anything. What's happening? And so I'm like plugging in my earbuds, like trying to figure things out. And
Oh,
like,
no.
You
I
did
didn't
great.
know.
You had us fooled.
and then at first I was like, can anyone even hear me? I was like, well, I said next slide and it went, so they can hear me.
All right, I'm gonna
So
stop.
take care, ladies. Have a wonderful weekend.
Yes. Y'all too, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.